Welcome to the podcast again. We have one of my good friends. It's Mr. Purple. It's Tom. Tom, what are we going to learn from you today? What thoughts are going through your head that are useful for us in the NDIS right now?
I'll tell you what you may learn from me today, and hopefully there is a learning for people, and thanks for the invitation, Michael, is I'll show you exactly how not to do something.
Good. What am I going to learn to not do? What is it?
But I think it's important that people need to be prepared to fail to be successful. Okay, and sometimes other people's failures is where you learn your best lessons. So someone takes a wrong turn, they've got an idea, it didn't work. What was the reason? Was it the execution? Was it external factors? Let's look at other people's mistakes and take them on. And obviously I was doing it, saying that answer a bit tongue in cheek for you. Okay, so I'll show you how not to do it. I've done lots of things right as well. But I think it's something that I like to talk about with the mistakeology component of myself is let's lean into how not to do something, and sometimes they're the best lessons.
I love it because so many of the people listening, they're the people who got in the top 10% at school. You know, they work so hard to make sure that their profit margin is 6%, not 5%. And here you are going, make mistakes. Mistakes are fine. So what would you say to, say, an NDIS director? He might have, say, a $2 million revenue per annum company, or even like a really small one, like, say, half a mil per year revenue company. What would you say to those directors who are like, oh, NDIS is changing, everything's hard? What would you say to them?
Okay, so the first thing is, yes, they're absolutely right. The NDIS is changing, the goalposts are moving, they move rapidly, and they do have an implication on your business. So those things, okay, so I wouldn't sweat about it too much. But probably one thing that's really important to everything is context. Okay, so I remember when I first lifted the bonnet up on the NDIS, I didn't understand it.
Tom, that this is really relevant. What else can you tell me more about this context?
So my context, which I'd like to bring up, a business owner, I'm predominantly working in the agnostic sense. There's that word again.
You love
Okay,
the word agnostic. It's so funny.
I'm trying to slip in as many as I can do speaking to you because I know that it makes you smile every time.
It does.
Okay. So yeah, I'm an agnostic businessman, okay, and then I had the opportunity to lift up the body on the NDIS, okay, which was a game changer for me. But the context that I'd like to share is when I lifted that bonnet up, I found the sector to be incredibly easy, okay, which might put some noses out of joint for people in the NDIS who are struggling with, and rightly so, some complexities there. But the problem is, once you're in it and you're in it long term, okay, you become institutionalized. You can't see the wood for the trees. And the context I'm talking about is comparing it to other industry, okay, which also has governing bodies, things changing the goalposts internally. They change the goalposts quite a lot. And I know, for example, okay, if I go and I've got a target client I want to speak with, just for argument's sake, and I want to go and get a coffee with them, nice, simple, mundane task, shouldn't be too hard to do. For me to get that in the open market is extremely difficult. And I'm sound like everybody else. I have to go through all the gatekeepers. It takes forever. Okay. In the NDIS, I get it every time. Almost 100% of the time. Yeah, yeah, brilliant, let's do it. And the reason for that is the demographic of the people that are within this sector are caring. Okay, they're more open. They've got their empaths. They want to see where there's genuine collaborations, and they welcome it. Now you can't do business with everyone, but the opportunity is there. Okay, so when you look outside in, what you'll find is there's a really clear-cut divide of what makes up the people that make decisions and communicate with each other are just really good people. It's that in itself that makes it easy. Okay, so I found it's business on a silver platter in some respects. Yes, you'll get your complexities. Yes, you get the moving the goalposts, all the things you cannot control. But you can control how you interact with the people, whether the providers, whether the staff providers, participants, all the way through it yourself.
This is magic. Can I tell you why I think this is magic? Because what you're
Tell me.
doing, yeah. Now remember, I was an NDS provider for a few years. I'm by your definition institutionalized, and there's some accuracy there. The thing with people in the NDIS is they don't realize how easy it is to get scale and revenue and new participants because people are not paying out of their own pockets. So the easy bit is building the scale. The hard bit is profitability because we're regulated. for how much we can charge, your profitability is capped at whatever the government decides. So if you go back 2 or 3 years, it was easy to have both scale, like new business, and a healthy profit margin. But the challenge we've got now is, yeah, sure, scale away, but don't expect to make a lot of money out of it. But what you're saying is so relevant. You're like, hold on, but you are dealing with the nicest people you will ever meet. And that is so true. I mean, I cannot tell you how, if I ever had a problem and I put up on LinkedIn to, like, I could send a LinkedIn message to say 30 of my closest people. If I had a problem, there's not one of them who would leave me abandoned, because that's who they are. And you would be one of them. And so you're so right. And then when you say this, it's accurate, but it's also against the backdrop of just the panic that people are induced into now that they've realised NDIS does what it wants. We're not in control. We're at its whim. And we better not act like it's any different. Like, what's going through your head? Because, like, we've got, like, I'm just aware the people listening, Tom, are just like, they're feeling torn. Like, as an outsider looking in, what are you saying?
So you're quite right with what you're saying. There's a lot of pressure. I think the profitability is something that needs to be addressed. But all that is an opportunity for change. There's ways to maneuver. There's ways to have complementary revenue streams. There's ways to cut back on systems and process. I was having a chat with a provider that I do business coaching with recently, and their way of scaling was just adding more people. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have less headaches. If anything, quite the reverse. Thinking more people, the work's done for me, I could take a holiday. It doesn't really work like that. If anything, the more people you've got, if you haven't got systems process set up properly, then your holiday's off. It's quite the reverse. But you need people in your corner who can look at things a little bit differently. Okay, find your blind spots when you're not lost in the detail or the day-to-day repeat, to see where those opportunities are, to either to save, to improve, to have it better efficiency, profitability, complementary income as well. Because at the end of the day, they're all businesses. Okay, profit's a bad word in the NDIS. Okay, which is probably why half of this has gone this way. But if you haven't got a decent profit margin on your business, your product's and your service is gonna suffer. Okay, so the person that suffers most is the participant. Okay, which is the last thing we want. It's follow closely behind the provider, because you need your state of mind. You need a healthy balance for yourself to be able to turn up for others as well. And you can't do that if you're stressed over a few dollars here and there. How am I going to pay for this? How am I going to pay for that? What if this goes wrong? You know, these are the things that are in our minds to sleep, you know? So hopefully that partly answers your question
It
anyway.
does. It absolutely does. And then I believe there'll be a level of disbelief and people saying, oh, Tom doesn't understand because he doesn't walk in my shoes. Well, guess what? I've walked in your shoes, but I also know what Tom's saying is true. There is always a way. And the other thing, Tom, is there's another way, which is just close the door on your business. Because if you get to the point where the profitability becomes so low that you could be earning more going and being an employee for someone, then it's time to step out. Because this is not necessarily your calling. This is your business. And you have a wife, you have kids, or you have whatever you have in your life. Why the heck are you pouring your heart and soul out into a business that is failing when you could lose your house? Because wrapping up a business costs so much. What's going through your head, Tom?
There's risks. There's risk with these things, and that's why people sign up. It's the double-edged sword. And strangely enough, I definitely will not say names here, but I've had a situation with someone, a provider I do business coaching for as well, where the margin there just wasn't there. Okay, they had lots of personal problems, and I won't give any hint to it just in case we can work out who they are. And I've advised them to close their business down.
Good call.
Okay, and they are doing it. I've got them to seek advice. They had the decision, what have you. But when you look at it as an investable product, as it's a blunt instrument, there's nothing there. However, by the time we broke down some components of it, there were assets. So instead of actually having an investor, they can exit, they can pay all their debts, they can have a break and take some time out because they did it the smart way. And yes, they'll resurface doing the same thing, but without the stress and doing what they love only, plugging in elsewhere. I put that down as a win.
That's a massive win. And the thing is, you can think of one person who's doing that. I can think of someone else completely unrelated. There's definitely not in your circles who's doing the same thing. And I'm overjoyed for them. And then people go, oh, but what about the participants? as directors, we are not responsible for. We can't, like, it's like in soccer. I can't change the gravity puts the ball down on the ground. It's like in swimming. I can't change that the water slows me down. In business, you can't change that if you cannot make a profit, it's time to step out. It's just how it is. And it doesn't mean you failed. See, your whole methodology of mistakeology, you didn't fail. It was a learning experience and you served while you were there. See, it was a season that you served and now you get to go serve somewhere else.
We're all custodians. We're all custodians. The business is something that it comes and goes. It's an engine that we drive. We build it. We drive it. We've got cars. We'll all earn more than one car in our lifetime. We're custodians of it, and it becomes someone else's. Or it just goes to the scrapyard. You know, we move on. We move on, and it's exciting to build it, to buy it, to play with it, to race in it, to compete with it, and follow the rules of the road. But we end up getting a different one afterwards.
That's right. And so I guess coming back to what we can learn as directors from you, because being real, not everyone knows you like I do. Okay, I know that you are one of the sharpest business people around. You see through the haze to actually the core issues. It's like, what would you say to NDIS directors, to managers, to leaders, or even future leaders when they're in the mindset of, I don't want to make a mistake, and that's causing them to go, feel anxious, not take action? I mean, what's your methodology there?
So a little bit sort of self-serving answer initially. So for me, one of the big things that people need to do in the end is you need to take a business coach on ASAP. It's very normal in the open market. It's rare when people don't. Most business coaches have business coaches themselves because they understand the importance of this.
And that's
This
fact, by the
relation,
way. Like, that's not self-serving, that's just fact. I used to
yeah,
business coach about 20 people at a time, and I had multiple coaches myself, and I was talking to, say, even Paul Bryan. He has a coach. He would be, in my opinion, the best business coach in Australia for NDIS, and he has a business coach. So yeah, that's not self-serving. That's just truth.
and it is true. But the thing is, what I do find in the NDIS, where there's a whole load of micro, small, and scale-up businesses, and there's an abundance of it, 'cause they're all fairly new, and they're all from like therapists upwards. You know, they're very good at what they do, but not so good at the business. They're crying out for that help. Okay, but it's not normalized yet. It's sometimes happens. Maybe they tried one, it didn't work, and that's fine, and they won't use it again. Don't be put off by that. Okay. Now the reason for this, and that, you know, there's methodologies, there's systems, there's process and things that can attribute to this. But what's really important when you're top of the food chain in your business, okay, you got your family leaning on you, you got your kids, you got your friends and that lean on you, your hobbies and everything else that you want to do, and ambitions lean on you, all your staff, their mortgages, their families, their kids, everything leans on you. The participants, the financials, everything leans on you. So it's a very, very, very lonely place very quickly. Okay. You need someone that's not a friend or family, okay, that you can communicate with occasionally and safe space, and flesh out things and find out what you can't see for
Can we
yourself.
unpack this
Uh,
for a minute? Can
yeah,
we
go
just
for it.
let's dig deep in this? So, someone like you helps, and this is not about people choosing work with Mr. Purple Tom as a business coach, because there's other people like I just mentioned. Paul Bryan. There's people like Greg Chadwick. There's you. There's me. There must be 100 people out there. And also within each industry, like for OTs, you got, say, Lisa Tufnell. You've got Claire Batkin, and any sort of like different in sector of the NDS, you've got your specific ones. Well, and the other thing is, if there was someone who by some miracle can't find Mr. Purple on LinkedIn, they can get in touch with me. I'll put you in touch. Tom, I'm so grateful for who you are. I'm so grateful that you're a guy who serves. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. I really appreciate your time today.
Listen, I appreciate the invitation. I really do. It's a great show that you're doing. You always turn up with a good energy. You ask good questions. You enable people to be themselves. And I always feel good post conversation. So keep up the good work.
Love your work. Thank you so much. All right, I'll see you another time.
See you soon.